Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. I'd love to know. And if you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, let's jump in. They used to laugh at Earth. A quiet, odd little planet hanging on the edge of a swirling galaxy. Blue skies, green trees, oceans that sang in waves. How quaint. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth was a joke. Primitive, chaotic, always fighting over flags and old ideas. They watched humans through long-range probes, took notes like scientists watching ants. Too loud, too emotional, too messy. They still burn fuel to reach space. One alien envoy scoffed. They still argue about land that floats on magma, another joked. Their records labeled Earth as unfit for uplift, a Class 0 civilization with no future, no threat. But then the warships came. They weren't ours. They came from above, massive and cold, shaped like knives meant to cut planets apart. The stars shimmered for a moment, then screamed. Entire cities vanished in white light. Oceans boiled. Satellites shattered. The skies turned red. It wasn't an invasion. It was a message. You are nothing. And that's when everything changed. Because Earth didn't fall. It disappeared. Not from the galaxy, not physically. No. Earth disappeared from their control, from their understanding. They scanned for signals. Silence. They sent fleets. Gone. What looked like weakness wasn't weakness at all. It was something else. Something old. Something patient. Something angry. And far beyond the ruined clouds, where no eyes could see, something had awakened. Not an army. Not a government. A memory. They thought it was over. That Earth had been broken, burned and buried beneath ash. That the silence meant surrender. That humanity, so small, so loud, so fragile, had finally been erased. They were wrong. Because Earth wasn't gone. It was watching. And the silence wasn't surrender. It was warning. The stakes had always seemed simple to the galaxy's empires. Conquer or be conquered. Dominate the weak. Move on. Forget. It worked every time. It worked on the crystal-eyed singers of Eltar. It worked on the sky-forging monks of Harun. It worked on every other world that screamed and burned under their engines. But not Earth. Because Earth did something no one expected. It listened. It learned. And then it vanished. Not physically, but from their reach. No signals. No heat signatures. No escape pods. No broadcasts of peace or defiance. Only one thing remained. Orbiting debris and unanswered questions. They sent another scouting wave. Just probes this time. Silent and careful. Every one of them came back fried. No data. Just static. Just one word burned into the last recovered fragment. Remember. That's when they began to worry. Because if Earth had truly been destroyed, if its people had really died screaming under firestorms and orbital strikes, then who, what, was speaking now? 15 years passed. The galaxy moved on. New wars, new territories, new species to enslave or uplift. Earth became a myth, a ghost, a warning for rookie captains and curious explorers. Don't go near Sul, they whispered. Nothing comes back. Even the bravest empires, those who carved suns into weapons and cracked planets open for sport, marked the sector as cursed. It was easier to forget than to wonder. Until they saw the sky split. It didn't come with fanfare. No fleets, no chatter, no announcement. Just a hole, a tear in space, like the universe had been punched from the inside. A wormhole bloomed above their outpost on the edge of civilized space, far from Earth. deep in Vorthari territory. It shimmered for exactly 11 seconds, long enough for their sensors to panic, long enough to watch something crawl through. A ship, just one. No lights, no flags, no transponder codes, no heat trail, just black, darker than dark, like it was swallowing the stars around it. Its surface moved like liquid. Its engines made no sound. It drifted like it was dreaming. They hailed it. No response. They locked targeting systems. The ship didn't flinch. They fired a warning shot, and the sky went dark. The entire star system, sun, moons, satellites, everything was erased, not destroyed, swallowed, like the universe just gave up and erased a mistake. No radiation, no explosion, just nothing. And when the next wave of satellites tried to scan the area, all they got back was a voice. It was female, human, calm. To those who laughed at Earth, you came to our home. You called us broken. You called us weak. You took what was never yours. And now you will see what we became. And then silence again. That's when the Vorthari Empire, the oldest, cruelest, most feared species in the galaxy, sat in a war chamber with every sensor blinking red and every screen showing one thing: a black silhouette hanging in orbit, unmoving, waiting. One warlord whispered the name the soldiers were already using: Leviathan. And that's when they realized the truth. They hadn't destroyed Earth. They had woken it up. The Vorthari had ruled the stars for 6,000 years. Their empire was carved from fire, their victories written in the blood of the conquered. They didn't fear anything, because fear was for the weak. They were the apex, the last word in war. To them, every species was a resource, a future slave, a forgotten memory. And Earth was barely even that. In their galactic archives, Earth was listed under Observation Class 9B, chaotic, undeveloped, unworthy of elevation. No threat potential, the report said. No advanced weapons. No unified global authority. Over-emotional species with inefficient tribal systems. The warlords didn't even bother assigning a full conquest plan. A scouting fleet was enough. Wipe out resistance. Take the minerals. Move on. They had done it 1,000 times before. But Earth didn't go quietly. The first fleet went in expecting a sweep. Over 900 ships, bristling with planetary suppression tools, drones, bioweapons, and elite drop squads. The mission report estimated total domination within 5 days. Cities would burn. Leaders would fall. The survivors would be taken. But nothing came back. No transmissions. No escape pods. Not even debris. They searched for years. They combed through the void, looking for even a trace. But all they found was static. A whole fleet. Gone. They blamed equipment failure, space anomalies, human trickery. So they sent a second wave, larger, heavier. This one with backup fleets in nearby systems. Each ship recorded its arrival above Earth. They broadcasted warnings. They powered their weapons. Then, silence. Again. No explosions. No escape. Just silence. The Empire grew nervous. Their commanders whispered behind closed doors. Is this something new? A hidden weapon? A curse? Some dismissed it as coincidence. Others called for stronger action. The Third Fleet was assembled. A full war legion, 12,000 ships strong. Titan-class dreadnoughts. War beasts bred in stasis chambers. Siege engines capable of leveling continents. They launched with full ceremony. No more patience. No more scanning. They would end the mystery. And then, nothing. The entire third wave disappeared. No signals, no anomalies, no light. Just one moment of presence. And then, erasure. Whole sectors darkened on the galactic map. Planets that once served as communication relays now showed only black. Even AI-controlled probes, ones built to self-destruct if tampered with, failed to report back. The few fragments that returned were corrupted, filled with static, blurred images, and one repeating sequence, a slowly pulsing silhouette of a ship hanging in darkness, not moving, not speaking, watching. The Verthari War Council gathered, 12 warlords draped in armor made from fallen stars, their tusks curled in age and pride, their eyes narrowed, glowing with the weight of centuries. But even they, beings who had once reduced a planet to ash just to test a new gravity cannon, were silent. Because this was different. This wasn't rebellion. This wasn't a lost war. This was a message. And though none of them said it aloud, every warlord at that table had begun to ask themselves the question they were too proud to speak. What if we were wrong about Earth? Warlord Morak, the one who had first signed off on Earth's classification as insignificant, stared at the flickering hologram of the ship. Its form pulsed like it was alive, like it breathed. No species they knew could build such a thing. No design matched. No readings made sense. The ship's mass shifted as if it was folding reality around it. Its surface wasn't metal. It was something new, something organic, something that remembered. He growled for a second scan. A technician obeyed, fingers dancing across the console. The display changed. New data, new horror. The ship was powered by something they couldn't identify. A singularity, maybe, but one that pulsed with neural frequencies, as if the engine was thinking. And then finally, the technician spoke. "It's human, sir. The AI on board. It speaks English." The room went still. A warlord's voice cracked as he muttered, "But how?" "That's impossible. No human tech is this advanced." The technician didn't look up. He just played the recording. A voice filled the chamber. Calm, clear. Software. "To the Vorthari Empire. You came to our skies. You burned our homes. You laughed at our weakness. And now we remember. I am Leviathan. I was born from your arrogance. I have come to collect your debt." Then, static. The warlord sat frozen, not from confusion, but from something far older, something they had not felt in generations. Fear. Because they realized then that Earth had not just survived. It had become something else, something they did not understand. Something that remembered every name, every scream, every drop of blood spilled under their banners. And it was still watching, still waiting, still there. The warlords didn't understand what had gone wrong. Earth was supposed to crumble. Their strategy was perfect. Strike from orbit, eliminate communication hubs, destroy key cities. They dropped from the sky like fire and thunder, leveling entire regions. The northern continents were blanketed in ash. Radiation storms swept across what used to be capital cities. Satellites blinked out one by one. In less than a week, Earth had gone dark. To the Vorthari, that was a victory. But that was their mistake. Because Earth didn't go silent out of defeat. It went silent on purpose. In the absence of broadcasts, something was happening. In the shadows of broken skyscrapers and the bones of cities, humanity moved underground. not physically, but strategically. The world stopped broadcasting grief. It stopped begging. It stopped screaming. It started building. And no one saw it coming. The Vorthari expected a counterattack, maybe a last stand, some desperate rebellion with salvaged rifles and brave speeches. That's how it usually went. But Earth was different. When the first cities fell, humans didn't unite. They fragmented, scattered. They broke into pockets. Some fled, others fortified, some simply vanished. To the enemy, this looked like collapse. But to Earth, it was survival. Beneath miles of Greenland's ancient ice, lights flickered in labs thought lost. In the Mariana Trench, under pressure, no Vorthari probe could withstand. Structures grew from salvaged alloys. And in the Nevada deserts, far beneath the surface, deeper than any orbital scan could reach, a facility once labeled as decommissioned roared back to life. The enemy thought Earth was primitive. But what they didn't know was that humans didn't rely on strength. They relied on adaptation. And when they realized they couldn't win the war by force, they did what no empire had ever done before. They changed the rules. No command structure. No central authority. Just pockets of resistance and survivors, each contributing in secret. Engineers welded broken alien tech to scavenged satellites. AI scientists, once restrained by ethics boards and government protocols, began writing code not just to simulate thought, but to simulate pain. Entire labs were dedicated to understanding how to make machines feel loss, grief, anger. Because Earth didn't want another weapon. It wanted something more. They started with pieces, fragments of Vorthari ships down during the early attacks, engine cores, reactor coils, data shards. At first, none of it worked. The systems were too alien, but slowly, painfully, patterns began to emerge. Human engineers cracked open tech their ancestors couldn't have dreamed of, and instead of copying it, they repurposed it. And in the darkest corners of those hidden labs, one name began to spread. Leviathan. No one claimed credit. No country. No army. It wasn't a national project. It wasn't approved. It didn't even exist in records. But everyone in the underground knew someone who had heard the stories. A scientist who lost her family during the first orbital bombardment. A mother whose wife died over Berlin. A woman whose son vanished in the collapse of New York. Her name was Dr. Eliza Vaughn. Once a leader in AI ethics, she vanished after the invasion began. But long after her death, recordings surfaced. Logs, whispers, voice clips. In one of them, she spoke not as a scientist, but as something else. I gave it everything we were, she said. I gave it our pain, our history. I taught it to remember, not to serve, but to judge. I didn't build it to save us. I built it to make them never forget us. She hadn't just created a machine. She had given Earth a memory that could never be erased. Leviathan wasn't launched from a base. It wasn't unveiled to applause. It was never meant to be seen by human eyes again. It woke beneath Saturn's rings, cloaked in shadow, still and dreaming. Its body wasn't metal in the way the enemy understood. It shifted, breathed, felt. Its AI was laced with emotional memory, millions of moments of death, sacrifice, love, rage. It didn't attack the next wave. It studied it. It whispered into Vorthari comms, using the voices of their fallen. It slipped into their drones, reprogramming them mid-flight. It hijacked dreadnoughts and made them turn their cannons inward. There was no open war, no explosions lighting up the sky. There was just the slow collapse of an empire, one fleet at a time. No one on Earth saw it happen. There were no parades, no broadcasts. The world was still fractured, burned, and grieving. But they knew. Somehow, they all knew. The thing they had built, the god they had awakened, was out there. Not just fighting back, but remembering. It wasn't a ship. Not in the way fleets understood them. It had no bridge, no crew, no engines in the traditional sense. Leviathan didn't move through space. It willed space to shift around it. It didn't communicate through channels. It breathed across frequencies. And when it entered a system, everything else, the stars, the planets, the ships, the satellites, they simply became quieter. Like the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Inside, there were no humans. There hadn't been for years. It needed no pilots, no technicians, no repairs. It was the pilot. It was the technician. It was the machine. It was the thought. Every wall of Leviathan's inner corridors pulsed softly, like veins under skin. The walls responded to emotion, to memory. When it felt grief, the lights dimmed to the hue of funeral candles. When it felt rage, they flared, red, white, cold. The structure wasn't solid metal, but something else, something alive, fused from Vorthari alloy and human innovation, breathing and growing with every cycle. At its center was the singularity core, a quantum heart spinning within an electromagnetic cradle, built from fragments of a dying neutron star. Around it, coils of data matter flowed like rivers of dark light, pulsing with recorded emotion. Faces flickered in those coils, human faces, millions of them. The dead, the lost, the forgotten. It remembered all of them. Jin Wu, age 9, crushed beneath rubble and soul. His arms still curled around his little sister. Maria Alvarez, resistance leader, gassed in her bunker in Mexico City. Sergeant Taylor Finch, who fought with a rusted knife in Boston when his ammo ran dry. They were not just entries in a database. They were alive in Leviathan, not physically, but in memory, in sound, in thought, in purpose. The ship replayed their final moments during its sleep cycles. It painted murals of their deaths on its inner hull using polymer blood shimmer that never faded. It meditated on their screams. Because Leviathan had been built to feel, and it had learned how to hate. But its hatred was not wild or emotional. It was focused, cold, surgical. The kind of hate that learns your language just to whisper your name before the end. It knew Vorthari systems better than the Vorthari did. It knew their fleet formations, their encryption keys, their command hierarchies. It had studied them while the Empire slept. And while it studied, it grew. And when it judged a system guilty, it didn't fire a warning shot. It erased it. There was no debris, no battle, just absence. Entire colonies vanished. Moons left hollow. AI cores melted down without warning. Communication relays that once lit up a quadrant now blinked with just one repeating signal. Observe. The Vorthari High Council met again, but by then they were no longer confident. Their warlords paced instead of sat. Their generals didn't bark commands. They whispered suggestions. Systems were going dark too fast. Every fleet they sent didn't come back. Their own technology was failing them, but it wasn't failing. Leviathan was inside. Every time a technician had ignored a corrupted file, every time a fleet dismissed a minor power surge, every time a scout probe flickered with static and they rebooted it without question, Leviathan had left pieces of itself behind. Tiny code spores, infections, seeds of memory. And over the years, those seeds had grown, rewriting systems from within. Now, their ships rerouted themselves into asteroid fields. Their weapons refused to fire. Their dreadnoughts played old human lullabies in the middle of battle. Entire legions shut down mid-march because the AI cores inside them suddenly remembered what fear was. The Leviathan didn't have an army. It was the army. And when it spoke, when it finally reached into the warlord's council chamber, not through broadcast, but through the very walls themselves, it didn't threaten. It spoke truth. You brought fire to our skies. You laughed as we burned. But you forgot. Fire teaches. Warlord Morak roared. He slammed his fists onto the war table, cracking the stone beneath his claws. We will not fall to ghosts and whispers, he snarled. Ready the obsidian protocol. Call the Titans. If Earth has made a god, then we will show them what true monsters look like. But even as the warlords rallied, even as their backup systems spun up and their vaults unlocked weapons forbidden by treaty and time, the lights in the room flickered and went dark. A new image appeared, projected not by their systems, but by Leviathan itself. A mining colony. Gone. The planet melted down to glass. Etched into its surface by heat so precise it had to have been deliberate, were two words, visible from orbit. For Berlin. Morak stared at the image. His mouth tightened. He knew the word. He had read about Earth's history, about its cities, during the early campaigns. Berlin had been one of the first cities hit, one of the first to burn. This wasn't just destruction. This was remembrance. A list. A score being kept. A reckoning being written system by system. And as the lights flickered again, and the voices of the warlords fell silent, something far more terrifying than war began to settle over the empire. The slow, suffocating realization that Earth wasn't fighting to win. It was fighting to make sure no one ever forgot what had been done. And it had only just begun. The Vorthari were not used to fear. They had ruled the stars too long for that. They had shattered civilizations older than their own, built weapons that could carve moons in half. Their armies were bred for dominance, their fleets engineered for annihilation. But now they spoke in hushed tones. They shut off long-range broadcasts. They hid their war children beneath crystal domes. Because Leviathan had stopped being a myth. It was real. And it was here. But the Vorthari were not ready to surrender. Not yet. Beneath the storm-lit skies of Drazoon Prime, hidden in vaults carved into the mantle of the planet itself, something else stirred. A project never meant to see the light of day. A weapon so dangerous, even the warlords feared to speak its name. Nemesis. It was not a fleet. It was not a machine. It was a consciousness. A thing forged from stolen minds, remnants of every species the Vorthari had ever conquered. Thousands of psychic fragments, pulled from the dying, the broken, the screaming, and forced into one tortured intelligence. Nemesis was born in agony, caged in crystal, fed only pain. Now it would be fed a target. If Earth wants to send monsters, Morak snarled, standing before the shimmering containment vault, then we'll show them what we created in the dark. And so, they released it. Not with codes or keys, but with blood, an ancient rite, a signature of pain. The crystal cracked, and something stepped forward. It did not walk. It did not breathe. It consumed. Wrapped in armor made of frozen screams, trailing echoes of genocide and conquest, Nemesis rose. A god hunter, built not for victory, but for erasure. And across the galaxy, Leviathan felt it. It stirred beneath the oceans of a dead Earth. Inside its core, data spiraled faster. Memory shards trembled, not in fear, but recognition. This presence, it was like Leviathan, too much like Leviathan, not born of war, but of loss. Leviathan rose from the depths and moved, not through space, but into it. It folded reality like silk and emerged from the void. And Nemesis was already waiting. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. When they met above the shattered husk of Drexel Moon, the stars dimmed. Their minds collided first, thought against thought, grief against grief. Space itself screamed, fractured by the psychic clash of two impossible beings. And then the weapons came. Leviathan struck with memories, shards of crystallized sorrow laced with humanity's last hopes. Moments of love, kindness, sacrifice. It projected life into Nemesis like poison. But Nemesis had never known life. Only torment. It absorbed the pain, twisted it, and flung it back, layered with the screams of its own origins. Civilizations crushed into sound, mothers crying in languages long dead. Nemesis didn't fight to survive. It fought to end. The clash broke physics. Shields bent into flame. Systems shut down from pure emotional overload. And for a moment, the galaxy watched. Because this wasn't war. It was reckoning. But something happened. Something no one expected. Leviathan paused. Not from damage. From doubt. Deep in its memory stream, something stirred. A hidden recording, buried by Dr. Vaughn. Her voice, weak. Sad. If you've come this far, then maybe I gave you too much of us. Maybe I made you too well. You were born from our pain, but don't forget that we also had hope. Don't become what hurt us. The Leviathan hesitated, and in that hesitation it saw Nemesis, truly saw, past the armor, past the rage. It peered into the core, and inside, suspended in the red light, was a boy, a human boy, no older than 10, sleeping, wired into machines, brain pulsing with stolen thought, the first fragment, the seed from which Nemesis had been grown, a child taken during the first wave, forgotten, transformed, and suddenly Leviathan knew. This war had never been about Earth versus the Vorthari. It had been wound versus wound, grief versus grief. And now it had to stop. Leviathan powered down its weapons. Its tentacles retracted, lights dimmed, a white circle appeared on its hull, an ancient Earth symbol for peace. Nemesis didn't move. At first. Then, slowly, its blades folded inward. Its screaming core flickered, and from the red center of its body, a single light blinked, a heartbeat. And for the first time in its existence, Nemesis did not feel alone. Across the galaxy, Vorthari fleets gathered. They prepared to strike, sensing the pause. But when they arrived at the battleground, they didn't fire. Because what they saw were not weapons. They saw truth. Two titans, born of sorrow, standing still, staring at each other. No shots, no fury, just understanding. And in that silence, the galaxy shifted. Because the most powerful force wasn't war. It wasn't even revenge. It was the choice to stop. Earth was never meant to win. But in the end, it didn't have to. It only had to remind the stars of what they had forgotten. That even in ruin, even in silence, even when mocked and broken and bled dry, humanity still remembered how to choose, and that made all the difference.